Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, I can prove it, and I am joined by the yin to my yang, the Brad Friedel to my John Strong, the Stu Holden to my JP Della Camera. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello.
See what I did there?
I did. We got some commentators going on.
We do. Well, you are the colour guy and I'm the play-by-play guy.
I see. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
And that also means I guess I'm the more accomplished soccer player in that scenario.
Yeah.
But you talk gooder, so that's fine.
We've never seen John Strong or JP Della Camera play. You don't know.
This is true.
They could have been internationals that just didn't make it.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure those two things go hand in hand. I think if you're international, then by definition, you done made it. But who knows? Who knows these things? You are, after all, the host and the lead commentator.
Yeah, there we go. That's my play-by-play.
There you go.
So we are here to preview the USA's game against Costa Rica. The USA's must-win game against Costa Rica. Second game in Group A. It is in Chicago. It is at Soldier Field. I know all this time. It is a 7 o'clock Central Time kickoff, which means 8 o'clock Eastern. And it is on... Fox Sports 1.
You got it.
I guess because Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern prime time is they put something popular on TV, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think they haven't changed the TV schedule very much, which is why you've had some of the bigger games on Fox Sports 2 as opposed to Fox, and some of the smaller games on Fox.
Is this the thing with the Copa America then? Like, say if this was a World Cup, I feel like they would just bump some regular programming. Like they do for the Olympics as well on NBC. They bump regular programming. Copa America, you're getting the smaller games end up on Big Fox just because they fall at a time when it's not displacing anything popular, I guess.
Yeah, and I would venture to guess that represents an underlying idea that, if you're a soccer fan, you're going to watch anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And if it's not the USA, then we're not going to get that big of an audience, so we can just kind of put on whatever and people will probably watch.
Here's an interesting question for you. So the US game against Colombia, Copa America Open, which they lost 2-0, everybody knows that, drew 1.5 million on Fox Sports 1. It was their second biggest ever US national team game. People will be disappointed after that game, but in some ways, this game is more important because it's must-win. Right? You could lose Colombia and still go through if we beat Costa Rica. Do you think we'll get more or fewer viewers?
More.
What's your guesstimate?
Probably over 2 million, I'd say.
Over 2 million? That would be blockbusters for Fox Sports.
You think?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm not disagreeing. I hope it is. I hope it is that.
But I do think... Even though it's counterintuitive, I think a Friday night, people are probably more likely to DVR that and watch it Saturday morning.
Yes.
And so you might not get as big of a number for that reason. I also think because it is a Friday night, you also get a lot more people going out to bars and going out to viewing parties.
I was wondering that. Does that count as one viewer?
I believe so. So even though you might have 20 people over to your house to watch, that's still one.
There's only one Nielsen box.
Right. So my guess would be that it would be a bigger number, but probably roughly the same number of people watching, just doing so in a more spread out environment.
This is more a lesson about how TV ratings are not particularly well judged.
Correct.
Okay, so this game, for our preview, for the Colombia preview, we talked all about how Colombia attack and what the US can do to stop it. This one's the other way around, I think. This preview is all about how Costa Rica defend and how the US can attack them.
Right.
And that represents sort of the change in opposition. Colombia are a team that maybe we have to defend against. Costa Rica, even though they are so effective and they have this great system that works so well, World Cup quarterfinalists, all of that, the US is still the team on the front foot in this game, I believe. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think least of all because they're probably going to go the 3-5-2, which sometimes morphs into almost a 5-4-1.
We'll get into this in a minute.
Right. Yeah. Well, but I would say, but also of that, 5 defenders and a goalkeeper. So of the 6 players from the World Cup, 3-4 aren't going to be in this game.
Yeah.
So
there's kind of an opportunity for the US.
Right.
And there's just the fact it is a must-win. And also Costa Rica are basically a counter-attacking team. So they're going to sit back a little bit anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm saying if you're missing 3 of your 4 key players, then you're having replacements in there already. So I feel like when you're missing key players, you tend to go defensive anyway.
I see.
And then you're already defensive. So you're doubling down on being defensive, which is why I think it's absolutely the game for the US to kind of go at Costa Rica and get the goals.
Can we talk first then about Costa Rica's defensive system?
Sure.
Because you just named 2 strings of 3 numbers. I honestly think in some ways this formation defies numbers.
Yeah.
You could legitimately call it a 5-4-1, a 5-2-2-1, a 3-5-2. And I think the reason for that is it's constantly shifting and morphing. It's like a lava lamp in some ways, right?
Yeah, it is.
It can be a compact, flat back 5, which I find fascinating. It can be a back 3 with maybe one of the wing backs popping out to meet to meet a winger. I genuinely, we rewatched Costa Rica, Paraguay, right? And I've seen some old Costa Rica footage as well. I'm genuinely like mesmerized by watching when their defenders move position for the situation. I feel like someone from the 70s who's got stoned and gone to watch a laser show or gone to the planetarium. You know what I mean? You keep seeing the weird movements that are happening. Or do I just need more sleep?
I think you need more sleep. I think it's more almost frustrating. That's what I found myself feeling against Paraguay. Because it would be like, wait, hold on, where's that? Okay, that guy's, okay, I know where that guy, wait, he's moved. Like, it's sort of, it is difficult to track and really figure out what exactly they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think at the core is essentially that back three. That's kind of what you can rely upon. Sometimes maybe they'll step out into like almost a 4 defensive players, but generally speaking, you're going to have that back three.
Well, here's the main thing I see. There's a back 3 centre-backs. Then there are the 2 wing-backs, right? Gamboa and Matarrita, sorry. They come into a back 5, flat back 5. They get compact, and that's hard to break down, right? You have midfielders in front of them as well as a shield. But when you come down one wing, the left wing-back, say Matarrita, will come out and meet you, leaving still a compact back 4, but with the left wing-back who's left to come and close you down.
Yeah.
So that the shape weirdly shifts to come meet you where you are. And it's very much like then Brian Ruiz will come back and fill in midfield, or Brian Ruiz will go and be a left winger. He does a bit of everything.
I think, yes, and so I think it can be a little bit confusing, but the way I see it at least, and I'm going to try to like simplify it as best I can, what I saw was almost like 2 sets of 5. That's what I think is kind of a consistent theme with Costa Rica.
Okay.
And you've got those 5 defenders, there's 3 central defenders with your wing backs, there's 5 there.
Yep.
And then you've almost got like 2 defensive midfielders.
This would be Tejada
and Borges.
Yeah.
Then you've got Ruiz on one side and Campbell on the other. So it's like 2 more midfielders, but they're spread wide. You've got 1 forward in the middle, which is Ureña.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense with you?
It does, yeah.
And when I think...
Ureña's the guy who sort of doesn't look like a professional footballer, but is actually kind of effective.
Yeah. There's a few of those for Costa Rica where it's like the guy who's 5'7" and is 33 and has been there for a while. And it's like, oh, okay, He looks like he's maybe not going to win a header, but maybe will win a physical challenge. But so when you've got that shape, those 2 kind of, as best you can put it, to 2 groupings of 5.
Yep.
So say Brad Friedel gets the ball. What I think is going to happen is
Brad Friedel will be in the commentary box.
He will, but if they kick it really far, maybe he gets it. Yes, Brad Guzan will get the ball.
An Alejandro Bedoya shot, maybe Brad Friedel gets the ball.
I think it's still in the air. That one from Colombia. Yeah, so those front 5 will kind of come together and condense into almost like that kind of pentagon circle sort of shape that we've seen. And that necessarily forces you wide, and that's what you're talking about, right? So then Matarrita might step up. But the other thing that happens is then those 5 forward players slowly slide over, and then they kind of spread out, and it kind of locks you in to one side of the field. Then they press, and then they try to win the ball off of you. Right. And so that's what I think they're trying to do, is by opening up that side. But that's with the idea that then you come through the middle. If you try to come through the middle on them, you're going to get blocked off because they've got the numbers there.
And Yeltsin Tejada is waiting for you.
Right,
Do you remember the first minute of Costa Rica-Paraguay? Yeltsin Tejada just goes in with a big tackle. He makes it very clear, like, this is my house and you are not passing through.
And that's,
this is not a public pathway.
I've heard that tactic since I was 11 years old. It's like you let them know right away that you're there to play, and maybe they back off, and maybe they remember that. And like, well, I don't really want to go near that guy. I might get a bruise again. And so I think that's what makes them so tricky. Is it's sort of like, well, if we go through the middle, they're going to clog us. If we go out wide, they're going to kind of force us in and trap us.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just kick it long and hope they make a mistake. And then that's what Costa Rica want. They can get the ball, they can settle, they can move it around, get back into their shape, be fluid, break on the counter, and then you're in trouble. Yeah,
you definitely can be in trouble when Costa Rica counterattack, because those wing backs, Gamboa on the right and Matarrita, I apologise. Those guys can get forward. I'm really impressed with their work rate. They run the flanks up and down and up and down. You got Brian Ruiz on the left. He will sort of drift forward to be like the left attacker. Joel Campbell to be the right attacker. That's what I saw against Paraguay anyway. Right. And then up front you've got Ureña, I believe is his name, the unorthodox looking centre forward. And the thing that I see is either you're getting crosses in from either of those wing backs after they've like maybe combined with Ruiz and Campbell down the wing. They'll cross from kind of deep. They'll cross from the end line. They'll look for those guys in the box. Or Mr. Brian Ruiz, who wears just Brian on his shirt. Did you notice that? He just says Brian. It's really nice and friendly. Is really great at sort of just lifting a pass over the back of the defence, and Ureña just makes this clever little run off the back of a defender. It's a move I saw quite a lot against Paraguay, even though it didn't result in a goal. But it's also something they've done in the past. So we've got to really look out for any space Brian Ruiz gets. he's going to be just chipping those balls in for Arena to run behind.
So you're right that obviously Brian Ruiz is a very creative force for them. I think more so than Joel Campbell. I was kind of surprised that Joel Campbell didn't have more of an impact against Paraguay.
I think Campbell's more about work rate. We've seen that when he plays for Arsenal, right? He always tracks back, and I think that's why he's kind of perfect in the system. He will be on the right, he will track back and do his defensive job, and then he can burst forward at pace.
See, I didn't see Brian Ruiz doing as much defensive work. I mean, he obviously did a lot of defensive work, but as much as his teammates.
No, but more so than the usual playmaker.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
But I do think that is an area that the United States can exploit, because it did seem like if he doesn't kind of get the ball the way he wants, he's not as inclined as maybe somebody else to sprint back and work really, really hard. I think he is kind of the flashier of the attacking players for them.
But it's all relative. Like, Riquelme would have nightmares about the amount of work Brian Ruiz does.
This is definitely true. The other aspect that I thought was particularly interesting to me is that obviously Costa Rica famed for that counterattack that can cause big problems. I also saw that back three against Paraguay, which was Duarte, Acosta, and Waston.
Yeah.
Waston won't be there. We'll talk about that in a second. They tended to get the ball and kind of slowly work it forward amongst the three of them. Paraguay stood off a little bit, and then eventually we're like, okay, I guess we need to press you since you guys are just passing the ball back between the three of you. And I think that that's a deliberate tactic, that Costa Rica are a more defensive team that can sit back and wait for you to make a mistake. And I think part of that mistake they're waiting for is for your team to get stretched and try to come out and put them under pressure. And then you're not as compact as you would be. You have to come out, and then they have those opportunities in the middle. They have the pace out wide and the creativity out wide. And so I think that's an area that the United States maybe needs to be a little bit mindful of, that you shouldn't just go chase those front three and try to put them under pressure, because it might look like they're stalled in their attack, but I think they're deliberately trying to draw you out, then
sense.
Hit that ball long in and see what happens.
So you're sort of saying that we just don't get tempted into chasing them out. But like, you want the US to just sit back when Costa Rica have the ball? Like,
no,
what if like a US attack breaks down, for example?
Yeah.
Do we retreat to the halfway, or do we try and win it back high?
I think again, you go with the. I am a big believer, not even in like the full system, but the Jurgen Klopp idea of a team is most vulnerable like when it has just gotten the ball, basically, like when it's just recovered
back off of you.
when they just want it back off of you, because then they've worked to get the ball back, but that generally means they're out of shape, and it generally means they don't have the ideal setup, both in terms of attack and defense, and so you put them under pressure there for sure.
Or it means they're starting their counterattacks and guys are moving forward, for example. That's why they could be out of shape.
Yeah, and
so you're saying you try for that?
I think you try for that, but I think that you don't just send numbers. So say you've gotten yourself back, or all right, put it this way. So say Brad Guzan doesn't have the options he has, he wants to have, so he boots it long, and Costa Rica settle the ball.
Yeah.
I don't think we send Bobby Wood and Clint Dempsey forward to try to force them into passing one way or kicking it long. I think you sit back a little bit, you get yourself set up, and it's almost like the Colombian trap. You get everybody set up, and then you kind of move forward together as a unit. But I think if you have your back four set, and then you have Clint Dempsey and Bobby Wood push forward, and then that means that Jermaine Jones and Alejandro Bedoya push forward, but Michael Bradley stays back, all of a sudden it's like an accordion that's like been stretched out.
Yes.
And now you don't have everybody where they need to be. You've got this long thing that can easily be bypassed.
This kind of happened against Colombia in the last 20 minutes or so. I feel like the US midfield and forwards were really like getting far forward, but the US backline wasn't really joining them. We were really stretched out. So I think the thing to do with Costa Rica is not get stretched out like that, because then they can play the ball sort of into, say, Tejada, or Borges in the middle, and then those guys can send it wide, and Ruiz will have big gaps between the defensive midfield. He'll have big gaps to come find that. And then the forward, Urania, I believe is how I should be pronouncing that. I apologise for earlier.
It's got the tilde.
What's that called?
Tilde.
Over the N.
Yep.
The squiggle.
Yep.
That's what I call it.
Squiggle. Yeah, that works too.
But tilde.
Yeah.
Okay, I will remember that for future. And then they can hit him in behind once we're stretched.
Right. The only wrinkle to this entire conversation might be just that Costa Rica had the draw against Paraguay, knowing that Colombia, they'd do well to get a draw.
Yeah.
2 points isn't going to get you out of this group, most likely. So it does seem like maybe they do need to get that 3 points against the United States, just as much as the United States needs that 3 points as well.
But I still think they'll counterattack, because I still think they probably think their best chance of scoring is on the break. Not like, so we talked about Costa Rica, Paraguay. They were both like, if you were their military forces and they both had the high ground, neither was willing to attack and like lose the high ground and risk conceding. I think Costa Rica will be more willing to attack the US, but they won't be willing to throw men forward. They will still have their defensive system and just maybe be a bit more aggressive when they counterattack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
more numbers forward on the counter, not in general.
And
strangely,
this, and started to get a little bit like Princess Bride style of like, but you would have done this, and I would have known that you were going to do that. But there's also a possibility that if you're Costa Rica and you looked at the U.S. play against Colombia and you've looked at some of the recent form, you might think like, we can just do what we do, and they're going to be the ones who feel the pressure. They're going to be the ones who are playing at home, who are going to try to do everything they can to win. So maybe we sit back, and then we invite them in, and we try to get them to go off their game plan. But if you're the United States and you execute your game plan, a smart game plan, perfectly, then it kind of backfires on Costa Rica. And all of a sudden, they're trying to play defensively. But if the United States go at them and play well and can possess the ball, it could be a 2 or 3 goal win for the United States.
So is that the equivalent of the US saying, I knew that was poison, but I've developed an immunity to that poison?
Yes, exactly.
Also, spoiler alert for the Princess Bride.
Yep.
We should maybe put that a warning at the start of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that probably would have been helpful. Yep.
So, in a minute, we're going to talk about problems that Costa Rica have specifically and the opportunities for the US and how we can exploit those opportunities. But first, Taylor, we have a sponsor. Today's sponsor is SeatGeek,
the world's largest event ticket search engine. They've simplified the online ticket buying process. Other sites not only make it complicated, they also make it more expensive by adding sneaky surprise fees at checkout. SeatGeek has solved both of those problems.
And if you've been watching Copa America Centenario on your TV, you will see that tickets are still available.
Are they?
For Copa America games.
Really? No, I think most of them are sold out.
Well, some of them, I'll be honest, some of them look sparsely attended, but aren't so bad. There was a game yesterday. It was Haiti-Panama, I believe, in Seattle. The official attendance was 20,000 people. That is not bad. The problem is it's in a 60,000 seat stadium.
See, I've thought about this more. I think that I could be totally wrong, but I think this also might be your lack of awareness of how teams make them sound better because you are a sweet man. So, for example, the Redskins, I think like the Redskins are the one that comes most readily to my mind, sold out every single game for 20 years. But you could go to there was the image 2 or 3 seasons ago, maybe even last season, where it's there's 10,000 people. There's no one there.
Right.
But they're like, oh, it's another sellout. And it's because they've sold the tickets. But if people aren't attending, then they still count those tickets as having been sold, even if there's no one there.
I see.
And I do think that there's a lot
maybe there weren't 20,000.
Yeah, I think maybe they sold 20,000, but maybe they only had 10 or 15,000 in actual attendance.
Okay, all right, I will accept that point.
Right.
But my larger point is there are tickets available for Copa America Centenario games.
Yeah.
If you download the SeatGeek app, download our sponsor's app, you can go to the Copa America Centenario hub on there, and you can see every ticket that is available for every game. And you can click, you can scroll through, you can see which tickets are priced higher and lower. SeatGeek even gives you, they do a score basically. They literally tell you, this is a good price for this ticket, this is an okay price for this ticket, this is a bad price for this ticket.
Yeah.
It tells you all the ticket prices, even the bad ones, so you can avoid them.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit when we're doing our Amazon shopping, you and I.
Yeah.
And you'll see something that's if every other product there is $60 and then there's the one that's $15, it's almost like, okay, so there's a catch. So either it's an inferior product or something is wrong and it's actually it's $15, but shipping and handling is $45.
Right.
And so you have that sometimes, I think, when you're buying tickets as well, that if you go to other sites and it's oh, it's a $15 ticket, you're like, yeah, okay, but then it's going to be this and this and this. And that's the nice thing with SeatGeek is when they say it's a $13 ticket or a $27 ticket, or for the U.S. it's $65, I think, for USA.
$69 for USA Costa Rica right now, Soldier Field. Yeah, tickets are available, $69 right now.
But you know that's going to be the price. It's not. There's going to be a bunch of fees that make it even steeper.
And there are also, to finish our SeatGeek ad read, but also a genuine thing, if you want to see Copa America while it's being hosted in this country, there are tickets available for some of the less glamorous games for $10. I think you could see Luis Suarez play for Uruguay later in this tournament. I think the final group stage game for $13.
Yeah.
I can't remember where that game is. I don't live near that stadium. If I lived nearby, I would pay $13 to watch Luis Suarez.
It might be Philly. Or maybe that's the Chile game. That's another one that's $10 to see Chile play. You could see Alexis Sanchez and Arturo Vidal.
I don't have my phone to hand, but if I did, I would be able to click the Copa America Centenario menu and I'd be able to look at all the games and tell you.
Exactly. And if you do so choose to attend a game, our listeners can get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the free SeatGeek app. Daryl, spell that title.
SeatGeek.
You nailed it.
.com.
And enter the promo code TSS in the settings tab. SeatGeek will send you the $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So download the free SeatGeek app and enter the promo code TSS today.
Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode of the Total Soccer Show.
Indeed.
So let's talk about...
Thank you to Costa Rica for having defensive vulnerabilities.
Yeah, let's talk about...
And discipline problems.
Possible problems for Costa Rica. So we started off talking this show, we started off talking about Costa Rica's back three, right? The thing is, this is not Costa Rica's first choice 3 centre-backs. Right. To start the tournament, they had Kendall Waston, right centre-back. They had my man, Duarte, left centre-back, and they had Johnny Acosta as the central centre-back. Johnny Acosta is not the first choice central centre-back. First choice is Giancarlo Gonzalez. You will probably remember from the World Cup. He is their key central defender. He plays for Palermo. He essentially said, I am exhausted. I am out of form. Please give me the summer off. I can't play in this tournament. If you give me the summer off, I'll be good for next season. I'll be good for Hex. Right? Costa Rica kind of focused on the Hex because getting to the World Cup, not as easy for Costa Rica as it is, or not as taken for granted by Costa Rica as it maybe is for the US and Mexico. Right?
When you first told me about that, I was like, oh, woe is me. You had a whole long season, did you? It must be really difficult to be a millionaire. But then you think about, for a lot of these, both CONCACAF and CONMEBOL teams, that for CONMEBOL teams that had the 2014 World Cup, as did some of these CONCACAF teams. Then you've got Copa America 2015, you had the 2015 Gold Cup. Now you've got this tournament with seasons in between. So yeah, for a lot of these guys, they haven't really had a break since the summer of 2013, maybe? Yeah. It's a rough time. It can be a rough thing.
So no Giancarlo Gonzalez. He's tired. He's not there. Central centre-back is Johnny Acosta, like we just talked about. 5'9". I see an opportunity right there. I see, not as our only plan of attack, but one of our plans of attack could be Clint Dempsey matches himself up, backs into Johnny Acosta. We fire a direct ball at Clint Dempsey if we need to, and he knocks it down for an on-rushing midfielder.
Well, except...
Is that too basic, or is that a thing that can definitely happen?
The big problem is that you've got Kendall Waston in there, who's very tall and wins everything. Oh, wait, no, you don't. Because Kendall Waston got the red card in, the 94th minute against Paraguay? He is gone, will be replaced by, I believe, is it Michael Umanya?
Michael Umanya, yeah. It has a tilde over the end, so you need to really pronounce that.
Thank you, yeah.
Umanya.
He's 5'7". So,
is he really?
Yes.
No.
So, or maybe he's 5'11".
Maybe not 5'7".
Okay, then
I've seen him.
Maybe he's 5'11" then. Yeah. But either way, not that tall of a centre back.
Right.
So,
to be fair, he is decent in the air, from what I've heard.
Right.
Yeah.
But
he's going to win aerial challenges, but he's not Kendall Waston, who is 6'5".
Right. Yeah. So 5'11" makes more sense. Yeah. But so I do think that strategy does work a little bit more. That if you put that ball in over the top, if you put in those aerial balls, that makes sense to me.
It's more just about Dempsey choosing Acosta. I would look at Acosta and be like, "Hey, 5'9",
right?
I'm coming to stand next to you."
But with that, I think if Costa Rica and you're smart, which they are, if you do have Kendall Waston in it, then it's like, oh, they're gonna kick the ball long. Let's switch up real fast. You come take him. But if you don't have that option there, then that works.
But even if we do that, we're causing mayhem in Costa Rica's defence, right? They have a plan of when they stay as a 4, when they stay as a 5, when one goes, when one doesn't. If we're making them switch their guys around to do something with Clint Dempsey, we're already causing all kinds of trouble.
So I think the long ball to Dempsey could work, but I think we also both spotted...
Not long ball. Please don't say long ball. Direct ball into Dempsey's chest or
I think
head.
that's semantics because you're trying to be one way, but it's a long ball, and it's fine.
I don't need branded as English. So I had an experience where I played indoor soccer here, and I played a long ball, and a Swedish man said, typical English long ball. And it stung so hard, it still hurts. It's been 10 years.
Yeah, but that's a tactic. They make you feel self-conscious about a thing that works, and then you're like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that. I'll play on the floor now.
This was a teammate.
Yeah, that's fine. It's still it's a tactic. It makes you play a certain way. It makes you think a certain way. Yeah. They've dominated you, but I think it can work. And there's nothing wrong with it because I think it's a way to bypass that crowded midfield. That if you can get the ball in behind and you get numbers running off of that long ball or direct over ball if you prefer, so it can be to Dempsey. I think we both spotted that in that 3-5-2, the wingbacks for Costa Rica do tend to get forward and they do so aggressively. Yeah. That leaves opportunities in behind. And if you've got Michael Bradley who can pick his head up, pick out that channel, and hit that long diagonal. If you've got Bobby Wood or Jesse Zardes or Christian Pulisic or whoever it might be, then you've got an opportunity there. So I would not be so bummed out if I saw the USA looking for long balls intermittently. Not every time, but intermittently.
Yeah, and it's worth just varying the approach, right? Sometimes we play short, sometimes we're looking for combinations, and then just to make them wary, sometimes we fire it at Clint Dempsey, and he wins it, right? And he deserves a good day after the beating he took against Colombia.
Although I think firing balls that he has to go up and challenge for isn't going to help him take any less of a beating.
That's true.
But that's fine.
We haven't mentioned the left centre-back, Duarte. He is good in the air. Duarte is good in the air. He will get in front of you and get there. So the person I least want to see Dempsey go up against is Duarte, just for the record. So one thing we talked about, Costa Rica have a system, right? We'll talk about the goalkeeper later. I know you're thinking it. Costa Rica have a system where they are constantly moving, like we talked about. The numbers change, right? Sometimes it's a back five, sometimes it's a back four when the wing back goes out, sometimes it's a back three. But it's not, anytime you're doing those changes, there's a transition period. You know what I'm saying? And I really think there are opportunities for the US if we can recognise when someone is moving out of position, or maybe when they're adjusting their shape, then there's an opportunity to exploit the moment of transition.
So how could they be aware of that? How could they look to identify that in the game?
Well, something as simple as knowing that, say, Gamboa has gone forward on the right, the wing back, right? But then the US wins the ball back. We know Gamboa has left that big space there. That's the time to get sort of left wing forward. That's a time where he can exploit that space.
Right.
So just know that that is a spot that may have a hole in it. So let's be aware of Gamboa getting forward and know that when we get the ball, quickly go down that channel. Is that too simplistic? I feel like that's an actual thing that could happen.
No, and I think that's maybe I understand your trepidation about saying long ball, but that's what I'm talking about. Because I think against Colombia, when we first watched the U.S., we were sort of okay with what happened in the first half. Obviously, going 2-0 down is not ideal, but our general takeaway was like, oh, we've had possession, we've had more of the ball, it's been okay. And I do think that there are segments in there when Colombia were like, yes, please keep the ball. like we're out of position, let us get back into shape.
Yeah.
And I think that there can be that, like, yeah, we're passing it around, we're moving the ball from left to right, back to the left side, and Costa Rica will be like, great, let us get back in our shape. And I'm with you that if you pick your head up and play that 60-yard ball, they might be out of position. Or at the very least, if you're that right back who's cheated forward in the first 2 minutes, the U.S. hits you when you're not there, maybe it makes you less inclined to run forward for the next 88 minutes.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. But I also think there's a even smarter way the U.S. could go about sort of frustrating Costa Rica.
What's that?
And it's sort of like the Karl Rove tactic of you find the person's strong point and you destroy that strong point.
All right.
Because if they don't have their strongest thing anymore, then they're really, really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think one of Costa Rica's strongest defensive points is when you've got those kind of those 5 front forward players that like to be compact and force you out into the wings. That's an intentional tactic. But I think what the United States can do that would be smart is play into that, but you play wide to Fabian Johnson or DeAndre Yedlin.
Yeah.
So in this case, let's say it's Fabian Johnson. The U.S. drops it to their left back. But you could have, say, Bobby Wood as your left winger. He drops back. And the biggest component of this is that if Alejandro Bedoya in that 3-man midfielder in a 4-3-3, if he's your left-sided central midfielder, as soon as that ball goes to Fabian Johnson, he knows his role. He books it over. Bobby Wood drops. And now you've got that triangle.
Yes.
Same thing on the right-hand side.
I love a triangle.
You could have DeAndre Yedlin and Jermaine Jones if he's the starter on the right center midfield. Chelsea Zardes if he's the right winger. He drops, and now you've got that triangle. Because the big thing that I saw that Paraguay did really well, at least in the first 30 minutes.
And they did look the more likely to score in that game.
They did.
Yeah.
And it was really quick one-touch and two-touch passing through the middle just like that. They found their little triangles. They found their 1-2 combinations, and they passed through Costa Rica. But if the United States tries to play slowly and force it down the wing and just play it to DeAndre Yedlin and let Yedlin run, Costa Rica are fine with that. But it's the quick passing combinations that kind of nullify the compact defensive organization of Costa Rica.
I think if it's going in and then out.
Yep.
So you talked about, say, Fabian Johnson's got the ball at left back. You give it to, say, Bedoya or whoever a midfielder is that's come across. So that forms that triangle because then Wood's farther ahead of Bobby Johnson.
Yeah.
Fabian Johnson.
That's their combination. Bobby Johnson. Yeah, that's fine.
But then it goes into Bedoya and then out to Bobby Wood, right? And then you bypass that way, and then you're sort of down that wing.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And Dempsey can be involved too. You could have Dempsey come short and you play to his feet and he plays it down the wing. I think 1-2s around those wing backs, if they come out to meet you, can also work to sort of isolate a wing back, 1-2 around him and get into that little space behind.
And I think there's probably some people who are maybe like trying to write down what I just said and be like, yeah, duh. Like if you're the left midfielder, you move over and you help out. And yeah, it is that simple, but it's also about immediate recognition that as soon as that ball is going to Fabian Johnson, Bedoya is sprinting to be in a support position, Wood is sprinting to be dropping into support position, and maybe Dempsey is checking over, so now you've got that overload, and maybe Zardes on the right side is pushing forward, so you can hit that long ball if you want. But it's the immediate recognition is what's missing for the U.S.
So all of this goes back to the conversation we had on yesterday's show about that Wall Street Journal article and the way Klinsmann talks about setting up his team, which is, I don't give them bullet points and specific instructions. There are no dossiers, right? I mean, he didn't say that, but that's basically the implication. Right. There are no dossiers for like what to do in what situation. It's more about a player knowing what he should do in that situation. So if we're thinking, what is the best team for quick combinations and exploiting the very little space that Costa Rica will give us, for me, that team includes both Darlington Nagbe and Christian Pulisic. And not because they're the hot hand, not because they're popular, not because the Christian Pulisic hype train is a runaway, not because I desperately want Darlington Nagbe to start. It's because both of those guys and their attributes, their soccer IQ, the way they think about the game, the things that they do, the Darlington Nagbe 1-2s with Michael Bradley that I see so often, Pulisic making those bending runs into space and knowing where the spot is to be, those attributes, those, tendencies, are exactly the thing that matches up really nicely against what Costa Rica are trying to do.
Okay, you've actually sold me on something, although it was mostly for what you said. But I'll get to the Pulisic part, which is the one that you had to sell me on. Because I absolutely think Darlington Nagbe should start.
Yeah.
I don't think he will, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think it would be that same midfield three. If I were going to...
Bedoya, Jones, and Bradley behind.
If I were picking, I might take Jones off for 2 reasons.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 reasons. One is that I think he didn't look as sharp as we've seen him look in games past.
Yeah.
He looked a little bit off the pace. He looked like he wasn't sure of himself when it came to possessing the ball and passing the ball. We did see that quote from him about how it seemed like maybe he wasn't so comfortable with what he had been tasked with doing in terms of cheating over.
He'd been asked to protect Fabian Johnson on the left side a little bit and also to be in central midfield, and it was like 2 things he was trying to do at once. Yeah.
And so that might be, but regardless, he didn't look as up for it as I would have liked. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this game, I think with what I talked about, where you need immediate recognition and quick passing, that's what Darlington Nagbe offers you. He offers you really incisive, insightful passing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that you sold me on, though, is the idea of Christian Pulisic's IQ and his ability to make smart runs and to make smart passes. Mm-hmm. But also, Costa Rica really physical. That game against Paraguay, there was 2 yellow cards in the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
We talked about Tejada's early tackle, right?
And then it seemed like there was a ton of fouls that were called, but the referee was calling people over and kind of talking to them. Didn't want to give a bunch of cards out.
Yeah.
And that's probably
definitely like the talking cure rather than the card cure.
Yeah, and I do think that you're going to see more of that physical play, and I don't want to see the United States go down that road of like, oh, you tackle me, well, then I will tackle you back. And I think that's a Jermaine Jones special. I think if you have a 17-year-old...
See the look in his eye, right, when he's tracking someone?
But maybe you see where I'm going here, but if you have a 17-year-old kid in there and he does take one of those fouls, it looks so much worse because now it's a big, 28-year-old hitting a 17-year-old, and I think the referee is going to call that more readily.
Well, even more so, there's just the fact that he is kind of weirdly strong.
Oh, no, he's absolutely strong, but it's just from, like, how many times have you played in a game where a big guy... we have a buddy Thad who's big.
Yeah.
He gets called all the time, even though he doesn't commit the foul, because he's huge.
Yeah.
And if somebody runs into him and falls over, it looks like, oh, the big guy knocked the little guy over.
Yeah.
Christian Pulisic probably wouldn't fall over because he is very strong. There's that great clip where he holds off 2 grown men.
Yep.
But just the simple, like, if they go to ground, more than likely it's going to be a foul going in the way of Christian Pulisic as opposed to against him.
Is that the only thing the only reason you see that Pulisic should start? Because I see it more as like his exploitation of space, his incredible pace. He is the guy that will get us down the outside.
I agree with you completely on that. I just think it's another little wrinkle that if he starts getting those calls, it's a thing that Costa Rica won't want to do. They won't want to go physical because we've gotten 4 free kicks because of this. We can't keep doing that. Or we've gotten 2 yellow cards because of this. We've got to play him differently. And if you make them change their game plan, then I think it works.
But the other thing I want to get back to is just the idea that these 2 guys, Nagbe and Pulisic, are the best exploiters of space, and when space is at an absolute premium, right? Like Costa Rica trying to play them, it's like trying to find a place to rent in Manhattan, right? Space is at a premium, so you need someone who is really good at finding that space.
Yep.
And if we want to move the ball quickly, quick combinations, Nagbe's the guy to do that. And because I think of Nagbe's passing, how quick and short and fast it is. Like he can change the tempo, he can set the tempo. And then you think of how many times Jermaine Jones mishit a crossfield ball or played a ball slightly too far ahead of... Like his passing was slightly off against Colombia. I think almost for that reason, I would not be thrilled to include him.
And it wasn't even just his passing, though. It was also his instincts. Because there's the one that comes to mind is he gets the ball and he takes a touch and he picks his head up and it looks like he thinks he's going to play it to Zardes in space, and we went back and watched it. And there's nobody really on, but he's trying to play that crossfield ball. But then he takes an extra touch to do so and then kind of slips and gets tackled at the same time, and it goes straight to a Colombian player.
Yeah.
And that's the ball where I do think if it's Nagbe or Pulisic, they take that touch, they play the ball, and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not that extra little touch that it seems like Jermaine Jones needed against Colombia.
Speaking of crossfield balls, I think that's another thing the US needs to exploit. So you talked about how they have sort of the four midfielders, and like one wing back comes out from the defence, and four midfielders will slightly come over and try and trap you in there, essentially, right? Try and get the ball back off you. But they do leave gigantic space on the wing. So if someone is smart enough to look up and ping a crossfield ball, a switch to the other side, and we can do it much better than we did against Colombia, because so many times we tried it against Colombia and it failed. I'm thinking specifically of a Jermaine Jones one that I saw and a Michael Bradley one that we saw. I think if we can successfully do that, huge opportunities will come on the far side of the field where space is open.
Again,
I would have Bradley and Jones, or I'd have Bradley practicing his crossfield balls all day, every day between now and Tuesday.
Yeah. But again, I think it's if players can identify that, because there were other opportunities in that Colombia game when that ball was on and we went into feed, or we tried to play it near and like over the top to the right-hand side.
Is this when you were punching the table saying, give it to Pulisic,
Well, he made the run. He was wide open. Yeah. So I think if we can identify that pass quickly, and again, I think a player who could do that is Darlington Nagbe. So there we go. So I think we both agree then? Maybe Nagbe and maybe Pulisic?
And I'm really surprised. I didn't think I'd be advocating for this, because I'm always like really wary of jumping on the hype train just for the sake of the hype train, and maybe it's sort of detrimental to the players that miss out. But I really think, again, their attributes are perfectly suited to trying to break down Costa Rica. The question is, who misses out? So we seem like maybe Jermaine Jones should miss out for Darlington Nagbe. Assuming we're doing this 4-3-3, if Christian Pulisic is starting, he's probably on the left or the right. So we have to leave out either Bobby Wood or Giassi Zardes. It's a tough one, right?
Yeah. Why don't you say who? Since I've already said mine. I see what you did there.
I think I was more impressed with Giassi Zardes' performance against Colombia than Bobby Wood's. I feel like he did a lot of really good work tracking back. I think Giassi Zardes also is more of a physical threat. Like, he's big and fast, and will cause all kinds of trouble for who'd be up against. He'd be up against Duarte, so that would be an interesting matchup. Bobby Wood seems like one game on, one game off, right? Like, it seems like there's a game where we see his soccer IQ and we see him create something. It's really tough. I think I would go Giassi Zardes and Christian Pulisic to start.
Okay. I would also say that
it seems
like Jurgen Klinsmann really likes Giassi Zardes and really likes Jermaine Jones. I can't see him taking both of them off.
That's a good point
for the game. So maybe if he's going to take off anybody, he takes off one. And it might be Jermaine Jones. That said, I would not be, and I don't disagree. I think of those three, I'm surprised to say, I just think Giassi Zardes, for the heavy touches, for the bad touches, for some of the bad passes
only
he had.
Only one heavy touch, really, in that Colombia game.
That we remember. I'm sure people who were watching him and frustrated with him remember a lot more.
Right.
We heard about it on Twitter.
Yeah, we did. Hello, Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. But I think between those two, I think Zardes has done more to impress between the two of them, but I would not be surprised at all to see the exact same lineup against Costa Rica that we saw against Colombia.
And just to be clear, it's still very, very possible to beat Costa Rica with that exact same lineup. We just think maybe it's a more effective lineup with Pulisic and Nagbe.
There we go.
We assume the same back four. Yeah, Cameron and Brooks didn't really do anything wrong apart from Cameron's flat-footed thing with the corner.
Up on your toes.
Up on your toes, please, Jeff. We assume the same fullbacks.
Yep.
Yeah? I'd like to see maybe Fabian Johnson get forward more this game. Do you think it seemed like he was deliberately staying back against Colombia?
Yes, I'm hoping it was deliberate, because he really did not seem like himself in that game. It seemed almost like when you're like coaching a team and one of the kids is sick and you don't quite know that he's sick yet, and he's just like, he seems off today. Like Fabian Johnson, I talked about this off air, that if you said who were your 10 best players for the U.S. against Colombia, I don't think he would make it, and it's not because he was bad. I think it's because you might forget he was there.
Quiet, yeah.
We had that the 60th minute. We were like, who won that header? Oh, right, Fabian Johnson. we kind of kept forgetting he was there. The longest conversation we had about him was which footed he actually was.
My guess is he was asked to stay home a little bit to defend against Cuadrado, but then Bobby Wood was asked to stay a little bit too high, and I think that's the reason there was trouble on that right wing. It's not really anything Fabian Johnson did wrong. But we did see Yedlin get forward quite a lot on the right. I would like to see them switch off. If they not switch off, turn power down, maybe one time Yedlin goes forward if we're on that side, or if we're looking for the switch and he goes forward from the other side, and then if he doesn't, then Fabian Johnson goes. If they took turns going forward, left back goes forward or right back goes forward, we can confuse Costa Rica a little bit more. But if they both go forward, there's trouble because the counter attack is on.
Absolutely.
So just take it in turns, getting forward, Yedlin and Johnson, left and right. Vary it up.
There we go.
Vary it up. Anything else to say about the US?
Nope. I think we've pretty much covered it all.
I have one question. Are we assuming the same shape, 4-3-3? Is there any reason that we wouldn't, say, go 4-4-2? Because that's what Paraguay did, more or less, against Costa Rica, and it looked kind of effective.
It looked kind of effective in terms of the way they play, which I do think is maybe an up-tempo pass when they're going forward. Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily the way the United States always plays. I also think if you go with a 4-4-2, it's probably going to be a 4-4-2 diamond. I doubt it would be a flat 4.
Well, we did go a flat 4 and just 2 strikers for the last 10, 15 minutes against Colombia.
Right.
Because we were chasing a goal. And I wonder if we're chasing a win against Costa Rica, if maybe, just maybe, that Klinsmann thinks, all right, 4-4-2 it is, 2 strikers.
I think if you see that, you see it in the same aspect, which is like maybe the last 30 minutes if we're chasing a goal. I don't think you start that way. Because I think we had, I can't remember who it was, so I apologize, but I think we've had a few emails and a few tweets from him about how Klinsmann, his goal is to not concede in the first half. Yeah. And he goes a little bit more conservative. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks with the 4-3-3 and tries to kind of, maybe you get a goal here in the first half, maybe you play your game plan, but overall it's like you keep it 0-0, you figure some things out, and then you come out in the second half and try to take it to them and try to get that goal.
And I want to get to the biggest advantage the US may have, that they didn't think they would have in this game when the groups were announced. Keylor Navas, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, Champions League winning goalkeeper, is out of this tournament. He had an Achilles problem. He, sort of like Gonzalez, asked for the summer off to recover. Maybe he's just busy celebrating his Champions League win. He is replaced by Patrick Pemberton. So if you've been listening to the show, you'll know that we found the video of him being referred to as El Eterna Statuta, I think it was. The Eternal Statue.
I think statuta would be statute, which I don't think he's an eternal law. But yeah, the eternal statue, because he doesn't move, essentially.
Essentially. We didn't see him stand exactly stock still in Costa Rica versus Paraguay. We did see him get beat and react slowly.
Yeah, I mean, it was an offside call.
But he was trying to save it.
Yeah, and he did get down low. But we didn't see anything that I would say that makes me say, like, oh yeah, he's definitely weak. He's definitely not ideal for them.
I did see maybe the reason that he is known as the statue. I think when I was watching him, because obviously it was my prediction, so I was keeping a really close eye on him, I noticed his stance was a bit weird. Like, his knees are kind of... He stands with his heels turned out a little bit and his knees turned in a little bit. I'm not sure why he does that, but it definitely makes it hard to dive one way or the other when your feet are turned in. Right. I think it may be this weird stance that he's adopted that makes him slow to dive either way.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to see how it affects his game against the USA.
But think of more like Dempsey knockdown, maybe Bradley shooting from distance kind of thing. That could be an advantage.
It could be.
You're not joining me in the excitement on this? Why not?
Because I think a goalkeeper's a goalkeeper and he's a professional goalkeeper. And
yeah, but one's Keylor Navas.
I don't disagree with you, but I think we talked about this with Placide, the Haitian goalkeeper,
Placide,
because he's short. People, it's that mentality of like, oh, he's short, just shoot high, it'll be fine, just shoot all the time. And if you get in the mindset like, oh, this goalkeeper is not good, oh, it's a new goalkeeper. We've had that in indoor and amateur games where it's like, this guy doesn't look like he's a goalkeeper, let's just shoot all the time. Right. And you shoot all the time. And then even if he's not the best goalkeeper, because you're just taking shots whenever they're available, it doesn't necessarily help you.
Okay, that's a fair point. Okay, but just a reason to be optimistic for US fans, because there is a version of this game where the US have like 10 good shots at goal, like chances, one-on-one chances, and Keylor Navas does his thing and keeps the US out. Like, he does his World Cup 2014 thing, the reason he plays for Real Madrid. That's the thing that happens. I don't want to jinx it, but Patrick Pemberton doesn't have that game. Doesn't have that game. Knock on wood.
He doesn't. But another point that you made earlier about really Patrick Pemberton is his lateral movement isn't that great. And I would say it's not so much the shooting that excites me, it's the idea of quick possession in the box where if you can get... So say Fabian Johnson is unleashed and there is that 1-2 combination, he's in there, he gets to the end line, crosses it back, or maybe cuts it inside and then plays it square into the box. I could see Pemberton having difficulty shuttling over to cover that, and then it's just an in-step pass.
That's exactly what happened in the friendly against Venezuela.
Right.
Yeah, Joseph Martinez squared it to Salomon Rondon and he just couldn't move quickly enough to do anything.
And that's what makes me more optimistic, is the idea of like a quick cutback, a direct pass, kind of like how Nagbe scored against Ecuador. That kind of ball in, and he has to react to it, and I think his reaction time might be slightly slowed because of that awkward stance he takes.
So the US, we triangle our way to the end line, we cut it back, and then Dempsey's there to finish at the near post.
There we go.
Yeah?
Sounds good.
All right, USA-Costa Rica is Tuesday night. It's in Chicago. It's 7 o'clock Central, which is 8 o'clock Eastern. It is on Fox Sports 1. This has been your in-depth preview. We'll also talk about it a little more in our quick preview of the game as we continue our daily Copa America Centenario coverage. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to preview USA Costa Rica with me.
Dale Grove, thank you for taking the time to preview USA Costa Rica with me.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and go USA.